The autumn rain hammered against the windows of Robert Mitchell's brick colonial home in suburban Detroit, creating a steady rhythm that had always brought him comfort. At 57 years old, Robert had lived in this house for 32 years, raised his son here, mourned his wife here, and now found himself navigating the complex dynamics of a multi-generational household he'd never planned to have. The kitchen smelled of the pot roast Robert had spent the afternoon preparing, filling the house with the rich aroma of beef, carrots, and herbs. He'd always enjoyed cooking, a hobby that had intensified after his wife Patricia passed from ovarian cancer 3 years ago. Cooking kept his hands busy and his mind occupied, a therapeutic ritual that made the empty house feel less lonely. Except the house wasn't empty anymore. 6 months ago, his son Marcus and daughter-in-law Vanessa had moved in with their 2 children, claiming they needed to save money for a down payment on their dream home. Robert had welcomed them without hesitation. Family helped family. That's how he'd been raised in the south side of Chicago, and that's what he believed. But lately, something felt off. Robert couldn't quite put his finger on it. Small things, mostly. The way Vanessa's expression would shift when he entered a room, transforming from relaxed to tense in an instant. The hushed conversations between her and Marcus that stopped abruptly whenever Robert appeared. The strange phone calls Vanessa took in the backyard, her voice low and urgent, her eyes darting toward the house as if checking to see if anyone was watching. He told himself he was being paranoid. Vanessa had always been somewhat reserved with him, polite but distant, careful in a way that suggested she was performing the role of dutiful daughter-in-law rather than genuinely connecting. Marcus assured him it was just her personality, that she'd grown up in a family that didn't show affection openly. Robert wanted to believe that. He'd tried to believe it for 6 months. But tonight, as he set the dining table for 5, himself, Marcus, Vanessa, and his grandchildren Tyler and Essence, Robert felt an unfamiliar knot of anxiety in his stomach. The front door opened, and he heard the chaos of his grandchildren returning from school. Tyler, at 12, was all energy and noise, his voice carrying through the house as he complained about his math homework. Essence, 10 years old and already wise beyond her years, responded with the patient condescension only a younger sibling could muster. "Grandpa!" Essence called out, appearing in the kitchen doorway with her backpack still on her shoulders. Her dark eyes lit up when she saw him. "It smells amazing in here." Robert smiled, his heart warming as it always did around his grandchildren. "Come give your old grandpa a hug, baby girl." Essence rushed over, wrapping her thin arms around his waist. Tyler followed more reluctantly, at that age where showing affection to family members felt uncool, but still necessary. "Where's your mama and daddy?" Robert asked, noting that only the kids had come through the door. "Mom's on the phone in the car," Tyler said, already raiding the refrigerator. "Dad's still at work, said he'd be late again." Robert frowned slightly. Marcus had been working late a lot recently, staying at the automotive plant where he worked as a supervisor well past his usual shift. When Robert had mentioned it, Marcus had explained they were dealing with supply chain issues that required overtime. It made sense, but it also meant Robert was left alone with Vanessa more often than either of them seemed comfortable with. 10 minutes later, Vanessa entered through the garage door, her designer handbag slung over her shoulder, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail that emphasized her angular features. At 34, she was striking in a deliberate way, her makeup always perfectly applied, her clothes always coordinated, her nails always manicured. She worked from home as a social media consultant for various beauty brands, a job that seemed to consist primarily of taking photographs and making phone calls. "Robert," she acknowledged with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, "dinner smells good." "Thank you, Vanessa." Marcus called, said he'd be another hour or so. Thought we could eat with the kids and save him a plate. Something flickered across Vanessa's face. Irritation, maybe, or calculation. "That's fine. I need to make a few calls first. Give me 20 minutes." She disappeared upstairs before Robert could respond. Robert helped Tyler and Essence with their homework at the kitchen table while the pot roast rested. Essence was working on a book report about Harriet Tubman, her small face scrunched in concentration as she tried to articulate why Tubman's courage mattered today. "She didn't let fear stop her," Essence said thoughtfully. "Even when it was dangerous, she went back to help other people escape slavery. That's real bravery." "That's exactly right, baby," Robert said, pride swelling in his chest. "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is help others, even when it costs you something." Tyler rolled his eyes at his sister's earnestness, but Robert caught the small smile on the boy's face. These kids were good kids, being raised right despite the tension Robert sensed between their parents. 25 minutes later, Vanessa reappeared, changed into casual clothes but still looking put together in a way that suggested effort. They gathered around the dining table, a massive oak piece that had belonged to Robert's parents, and Robert served up generous portions of pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans. "Grandpa, this is so good," Tyler said through a mouthful of beef. "Chew and swallow before you speak," Vanessa corrected automatically, her attention on her phone. Robert noticed she'd barely touched her food, pushing the mashed potatoes around her plate while typing something on her screen. "Everything okay, Vanessa?" he asked carefully. She looked up, startled as if she'd forgotten he could see her. "Fine. Just dealing with a difficult client." The rest of dinner passed in relative quiet, interrupted only by the children's chatter about school and their upcoming Halloween costumes. After the kids finished, they asked to be excused to watch TV, and Robert granted permission, which left him alone with Vanessa in the dining room. The silence stretched between them, awkward and heavy. Robert stood to clear the plates, but Vanessa spoke before he could leave. "Robert, can I get you something to drink? You've been on your feet cooking all afternoon. Sit down, relax. Let me serve you for once." The offer was so unexpected that Robert actually paused, studying her face. Vanessa rarely offered to do anything for him. Their relationship existed in a state of careful politeness. She thanked him for letting them stay. He assured her it was no trouble, and they both maintained their distance. "That's kind of you," Robert said slowly. "I wouldn't mind some of that sweet tea I made yesterday." "Perfect. I'll bring it to you in the living room. Go sit down, put your feet up." There was something almost manic in her cheerfulness, an overcompensation that set off alarm bells in Robert's mind. But he was tired, and his knees did ache from standing, so he made his way to his recliner in the living room where the kids were watching a cartoon. A few minutes later, Vanessa appeared with 2 glasses of sweet tea, ice cubes clinking against the sides. She handed one to Robert with a smile that still didn't quite reach her eyes. "Here you go. I got myself some too." She settled on the couch, her own glass in hand, watching him with an intensity that made Robert uncomfortable. He raised the glass to his lips, but something made him hesitate. Maybe it was instinct honed from 57 years of life. Maybe it was the strange energy Vanessa was giving off. Maybe it was the way she was watching him so intently, her own glass untouched in her hand. Whatever it was, Robert didn't drink. Instead, he pretended to take a sip, making the motion but keeping his lips sealed. Then he lowered the glass, watching Vanessa over the rim. Her disappointment was barely concealed, a slight tightening around her eyes, a subtle shift in her posture. "Is it not sweet enough?" she asked. "It's fine," Robert said carefully, "just letting it cool a bit." He set the glass on the side table next to his recliner and turned his attention to the TV, but his peripheral vision stayed locked on Vanessa. She sat on the couch, her own glass still full, her eyes darting between Robert and his untouched tea. "I'm going to get the kids ready for bed," Vanessa announced abruptly, standing up. "Tyler, Essence, let's go. Bath time." The children groaned but obeyed, trudging upstairs behind their mother. The moment they disappeared, Robert heard Vanessa's voice drift down, sharp, frustrated, though he couldn't make out the words. Robert sat very still in his recliner, his mind racing. He looked at the glass of sweet tea on the side table, condensation forming on the outside, completely innocent in appearance. But Robert had lived long enough to trust his instincts, and his instincts were screaming that something was very, very wrong. He stood up, picked up both glasses, his and Vanessa's, and carried them to the kitchen. He poured his tea down the sink, watching the amber liquid swirl down the drain. Then he carefully poured Vanessa's tea into a mason jar, sealed it, and placed it in the back of the refrigerator behind some leftover containers. He wasn't sure what he was preserving as evidence or why he felt the need to save it. But years of working as a quality control inspector at an automotive parts manufacturer had taught him the value of documentation and proof. Robert washed both glasses thoroughly, dried them, and put them away. Then he stood at the kitchen sink, staring out the window at his rain-soaked backyard, and allowed himself to acknowledge the thought he'd been pushing away for weeks. Something was seriously wrong in this house, and it centered on his daughter-in-law. The question was, what was she planning and why? The front door opened, and Marcus's voice called out, "Dad, I'm home!" Robert composed his face and walked to the entryway where his son stood, still in his work uniform, looking exhausted. At 36, Marcus was the spitting image of Robert at that age, tall, broad-shouldered, with the same deep-set eyes and strong jawline. "Hey, son, long day?" "You have no idea," Marcus sighed, dropping his lunch bag on the bench by the door. "The new quality standards are killing us. Half the team is talking about quitting." "Saved you a plate. Let me heat it up." In the kitchen, as Robert reheated the pot roast, Marcus leaned against the counter scrolling through his phone. "Where's Vanessa?" "Upstairs getting the kids ready for bed." "And how was she today? She seem okay to you?" The question made Robert pause in the act of removing the plate from the microwave. "Why do you ask?" Marcus shrugged, but there was tension in the gesture. "I don't know. She's been acting strange lately, stressed about something, won't tell me what." Robert placed the steaming plate in front of his son and sat down across from him. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are things okay between you and Vanessa?" Marcus's hand froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're working late a lot. She's always on her phone, and there's a tension in this house that I can feel but can't quite name." Marcus set down his fork, his appetite apparently gone. "Things are complicated." "How complicated?" "We're having some financial issues," Marcus admitted quietly, glancing toward the stairs to make sure they were still alone. "Bad ones. Vanessa's business isn't doing as well as she claims. We've got credit card debt, medical bills from when Tyler broke his arm last year, and we're not saving anything for that house we're supposedly buying." Robert felt a chill run down his spine. "How bad is it?" "Dad, I don't want to burden you with this." "How bad, Marcus?" Marcus ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking much older than 36. "We're about 40,000 in debt. And I just found out Vanessa's been taking money from the kids' college fund to pay credit card minimums." The number hung in the air between them like a bomb. "Does she know you know?" Robert asked carefully. "I confronted her about it last week. She said she had a plan to fix it, told me not to worry, that she was handling it, but she won't tell me what the plan is." Marcus looked at his father with worried eyes. "Dad, you don't think she's doing something illegal, do you?" Robert thought about the glass of sweet tea, about Vanessa's strange behavior, about the way she'd watched him so intently. "I don't know, son," he said honestly, "but I think we need to pay closer attention to what's going on in this house." Upstairs, they heard Vanessa's voice reading a bedtime story to Essence, her tone sweet and maternal, completely at odds with the woman Robert had observed all evening. Father and son sat at the kitchen table, the untouched pot roast cooling between them, both wondering what secrets were hiding in the shadows of their own home. Robert couldn't sleep that night. He lay in his bedroom on the second floor, listening to the sounds of his house settling, the creak of floorboards, the hum of the furnace kicking on against the October chill, the distant sound of a train whistle from the rail yard 3 miles away. Around 2 in the morning, he heard footsteps in the hallway, soft, deliberate, trying to be quiet. Robert slipped out of bed and cracked his door open just enough to see Vanessa moving down the stairs, her phone illuminating her face in the darkness. She was wearing a silk robe, her hair loose around her shoulders, and she moved with purpose. He waited 30 seconds, then followed. From the upstairs landing, Robert watched as Vanessa entered the kitchen. He heard the refrigerator open, the clink of glass. Was she looking for the tea he'd poured out? Did she realize he hadn't drunk it? Robert's heart pounded as he crept down 3 more stairs, positioning himself where he could see into the kitchen through the doorway. Vanessa stood at the sink, illuminated by the under-cabinet lighting she'd switched on. She held a small brown bottle in her hand, no bigger than her thumb, and was examining it with an expression Robert couldn't quite read. Regret? Frustration? Fear? She unscrewed the cap, held the bottle over the sink and paused. For a long moment, she stood frozen, as if wrestling with some internal decision. Then she poured the contents down the drain, rinsed the bottle thoroughly, and dropped it in the trash can under the sink, burying it beneath used coffee grounds and vegetable peels. Robert barely breathed as Vanessa stood at the sink, her hands gripping the edge of the counter, her shoulders shaking. Was she crying? After a few moments, she composed herself, switched off the light, and headed back upstairs. Robert pressed himself against the wall in the darkness as she passed, her footsteps moving toward the master bedroom she shared with Marcus. Once he heard their bedroom door close, Robert made his way down to the kitchen. He didn't turn on any lights. Instead, he used the flashlight on his phone, carefully directing it into the trash can under the sink. He found the small brown bottle buried under the coffee grounds. Using a paper towel, he carefully retrieved it, examining it in the dim light. The label had been peeled off, deliberately removed, leaving only sticky residue. But the bottle itself was distinctive. Amber-colored glass with a dropper top, the kind used for essential oils or tinctures, or medicine, or poison. Robert's hands trembled slightly as he sealed the bottle in a plastic sandwich bag and hid it in the pocket of his robe. Then he returned to his bedroom, his mind racing with terrible possibilities. The next morning, Robert was up before anyone else. He'd barely slept, too wired with adrenaline and anxiety. By 6 a.m., he was in the kitchen making coffee, the small brown bottle hidden in his sock drawer upstairs. Marcus appeared first, dressed for work, moving with the sluggish movements of someone who hadn't slept well either. "Morning, Dad." "Morning, son. Coffee's fresh." They stood in the kitchen together, the early morning light just beginning to filter through the windows, casting long shadows across the tile floor. "Marcus," Robert said carefully, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly." His son looked up from his coffee, instantly alert to the serious tone. "What is it? Has Vanessa ever talked about me being a burden, about wishing we had the house to ourselves?" Marcus's expression shifted, surprise mixed with something that looked like guilt. "Why would you ask that?" "Because I need to know if I'm imagining things, or if there's something I should be worried about." Marcus set down his coffee cup, conflict clear on his face. "She mentioned once or twice that it would be easier if it was just the 4 of us." That having you here made her feel like she couldn't fully relax in her own space. But Dad, she never said anything about you being a burden. Did she mention any specific reasons she wanted me gone? She said something about wanting to rent out the basement as an Airbnb to make extra money. But this is your house, Dad. I told her that wasn't happening. Marcus paused. Why are you asking me this? Robert wanted to tell him about the tea, about the bottle, about Vanessa's midnight trip to the kitchen, but he had no proof of anything except his own suspicions. And accusing a man's wife of trying to harm his father was not something you did lightly. Just feeling a little unwelcome lately, Robert said instead. Wanted to know if it was in my head. You are not unwelcome in your own home, Marcus said firmly. This is temporary, remember? As soon as we get our finances sorted, we'll be out of your hair. But as Marcus left for work 20 minutes later, Robert wondered if Vanessa had a different timeline in mind. One that didn't involve waiting to save money. One that involved an inheritance arriving sooner rather than later. Robert had a life insurance policy worth $300,000. His house, fully paid off, was worth another $400,000 in Detroit's revitalized housing market. His retirement savings totaled about $200,000, nearly $1 million, all of which would go to Marcus when Robert died. And Marcus and Vanessa were $40,000 in debt with no clear way out. The math was simple and horrifying. After the kids left for school and Vanessa retreated to her upstairs office for her work calls, Robert made a decision. He retrieved the brown bottle from his sock drawer, placed it carefully in his jacket pocket, and drove to the one person he trusted absolutely, his younger sister, Denise. Denise lived in a tidy ranch house in Southfield, about 20 minutes away. At 53, she was a nurse practitioner at a family medicine clinic, sharp as a tack and fiercely protective of her older brother. She'd never particularly liked Vanessa, always saying there was something off about the woman, though she could never articulate what. Denise answered the door in her scrubs, about to leave for her afternoon shift. "Robert, what are you doing here? Are you okay?" "I need your help with something," Robert said, "and I need you to promise you won't think I'm losing my mind." 20 minutes later, they sat at Denise's kitchen table, the brown bottle between them. Robert had explained everything. The strange behavior, the tea, the midnight disposal, his growing suspicions. Denise examined the bottle carefully, holding it up to the light. "This is a tincture bottle. We see them all the time for herbal supplements, CBD oil, that kind of thing, but it could hold anything liquid. Can you have it tested, find out what was in it?" "Robert, even if there was residue, testing costs money. And what exactly are you accusing Vanessa of?" Robert took a deep breath. "I think she might be trying to poison me." The words sounded insane, spoken out loud, like something from a television crime drama rather than real life in suburban Detroit. But Denise didn't laugh. She'd seen too much in her nursing career to dismiss anything out of hand. "Let me talk to someone I know in the hospital lab," she said slowly. "They might be willing to test for common toxins as a favor." "But Robert, you need to understand. Even if we find something, it doesn't prove Vanessa put it in your drink. And without proof of that, all you have is a bottle that could have contained anything." "I know, but I need to know I'm not crazy." Denise reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You're not crazy. Your instincts kept you alive through Vietnam, through decades in manufacturing, through raising a son alone after Patricia died. Don't doubt them now." Over the next 3 days, Robert became hyper-vigilant in his own home. He noticed things he'd been too polite to observe before. Vanessa had expensive tastes, designer handbags, premium skincare products, regular salon appointments, all while claiming her business was struggling. She received packages almost daily, all from high-end retailers, but told Marcus they were business samples. She made frequent calls on her cell phone, but wouldn't take them in front of Robert, always stepping outside or into another room. The few snippets he overheard didn't sound like business calls. The tone was too intimate, too emotional. She watched true crime shows obsessively, particularly ones about murders that went unsolved or life insurance schemes. Robert caught her taking notes once, her handwriting small and precise in a leather-bound journal she kept in her nightstand. And she asked Marcus pointed questions about Robert's health, his routines, his medications. When did he take his blood pressure pills? Did he ever forget doses? Had he seemed forgetful lately? Marcus relayed these conversations to Robert, not out of suspicion but out of concern that Vanessa was genuinely worried about her father-in-law's well-being. But Robert heard them differently. He heard someone gathering information, looking for vulnerabilities, planning something terrible. On the fourth day after the tea incident, Denise called. "The lab found something," she said without preamble. "Residue in the bottle tested positive for a significant concentration of diphenhydramine." "What's that?" "The active ingredient in Benadryl, antihistamine. In normal doses, it makes you drowsy. In high doses, especially combined with alcohol or other medications, it can cause confusion, rapid heartbeat, seizures. In elderly patients or people with heart conditions, it can be fatal." Robert's chest tightened. "I take blood pressure medication. I know, and mixing high doses of diphenhydramine with blood pressure meds can cause dangerously low blood pressure, dizziness, falls. An elderly man living alone having a dizzy spell, falling down the stairs, hitting his head. That's how it would look. An unfortunate accident." The room seemed to tilt around Robert. This was real. This wasn't paranoia or an overactive imagination. His daughter-in-law had attempted to poison him. "What do I do?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "You call the police," Denise said firmly. "Right now." But Robert hesitated. "I have a bottle with Benadryl residue. That's not proof Vanessa put it in my drink. There's no surveillance footage, no witnesses, and she's my son's wife. If I'm wrong, you're not wrong. But if I am, I destroy Marcus's marriage. I destroy my relationship with my grandchildren. I tear this family apart based on suspicion and a bottle I found in the trash." Denise was quiet for a long moment. "So what are you going to do?" Robert thought about Tyler and Essence, about Marcus working himself to exhaustion, about Vanessa's cold eyes watching him over that glass of tea. "I'm going to get proof," he said. "Real proof, something that can't be denied or explained away." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." That evening, Robert went through his house with new eyes, considering how he could document what was happening. His house had a security system, but no internal cameras. Patricia had always felt they were invasive. Now, Robert wished he'd installed them. He couldn't exactly set up visible cameras without tipping Vanessa off, but he could buy small hidden cameras online, the kind that looked like smoke detectors or phone chargers. Robert had never been particularly tech-savvy, but fear was a powerful motivator. He spent hours that night researching, reading reviews, learning about Wi-Fi-enabled cameras that recorded to cloud storage. By the end of the week, he'd ordered 3 small cameras and had them shipped to Denise's house. She helped him install them. One in the kitchen disguised as a wall clock, one in the living room disguised as an air freshener, and one in the hallway upstairs disguised as a smoke detector. "I feel like I'm in a spy movie," Denise muttered as she positioned the hallway camera. "This is insane." "Insane is living with someone who might be trying to kill you," Robert countered. The cameras were motion-activated and sent alerts to Robert's phone. He could watch live footage or review recorded material from any time in the past 30 days. Now all he had to do was wait for Vanessa to make her next move. He didn't have to wait long. Over the next 2 weeks, Robert watched footage that confirmed his worst fears and revealed details he'd never suspected. He watched from his phone during breaks at his part-time job at the hardware store, reviewed footage late at night when the house was quiet, and sent particularly damning clips to Denise for safekeeping. The first revealing footage came just 3 days after the cameras were installed. Vanessa, alone in the kitchen while the kids were at school and Marcus at work, removed a small amber bottle from her purse, identical to the one Robert had found in the trash, and examined it thoughtfully. She pulled out her phone and made a call, putting it on speaker while she paced the kitchen. "I don't know if I can do this," Vanessa's voice came through clearly on the recording. "It feels too risky." A male voice responded, one Robert didn't recognize. "You're the one who said you couldn't wait any longer, that you were drowning in debt and needed a solution. I know what I said, but actually going through with it, that's different. He's Marcus's father. He's my children's grandfather. He's also standing between you and financial freedom. The life insurance alone would clear your debts and give you the fresh start you've been talking about for months. What if I get caught?" "You won't. We've been over this. Small doses in his evening tea, enough to make him dizzy and confused. He's old. He has heart issues. He takes multiple medications. When he falls or has a cardiac event, it'll look completely natural. The medical examiner won't even run a full tox screen on a 57-year-old man with documented health problems." Robert's hands shook as he watched this exchange, bile rising in his throat. The camera had captured Vanessa's face perfectly. The conflict there, yes, but also the calculation. She was seriously considering this. She was planning his murder. "And you're sure Marcus won't suspect anything?" Vanessa asked. "Why would he? You're the devoted wife, stressed about finances, doing everything you can to hold the family together. When his father dies of an apparent heart attack or stroke, Marcus will lean on you for support. You'll inherit, pay off your debts, buy your dream house, and finally have the life you deserve." "What about us?" Vanessa's voice dropped lower, more intimate. "Once you're financially stable and enough time has passed, you can decide what you want to do about your marriage. But one problem at a time, Vanessa." Robert paused the footage, his chest tight with rage and heartbreak. There was someone else. Vanessa wasn't just planning to kill him for money. She was having an affair and planning to eventually leave Marcus anyway. He forwarded the clip to Denise with shaking fingers, then forced himself to keep watching. Over the following days, the cameras captured more damning evidence. Vanessa researching untraceable poisons and natural-looking deaths on her laptop at the kitchen table. Vanessa meeting a man, tall, white, in his early 40s, in the driveway late one night when everyone else was asleep. The two of them embracing with an intimacy that made their relationship clear. Vanessa standing in Robert's bedroom doorway while he pretended to sleep, watching him with an expression that sent chills down his spine. Was she imagining him dead, planning the timeline? The most chilling footage came exactly 2 weeks after the cameras were installed. Robert had deliberately stayed late at work, telling Marcus he was covering a shift for a sick colleague. He wanted Vanessa to feel like she had opportunity. The camera captured her entering his bedroom, checking to ensure he wasn't there, then opening his nightstand drawer where he kept his medications. She photographed the labels with her phone, making note of dosages and interactions. Then she moved to his bathroom, documenting everything in his medicine cabinet. She was thorough, methodical, and completely calm. This wasn't a moment of passion or panic. This was premeditated, carefully planned murder. Robert had seen enough. He compiled the most damning footage into a folder and called his son. "Marcus, I need you to come to Aunt Denise's house after work tomorrow. Don't tell Vanessa where you're going. Just say you have an errand to run. Dad, what's going on? I'll explain everything tomorrow, but son," Robert's voice cracked slightly, "you need to prepare yourself. What I'm going to show you will change everything." The next evening, Robert, Denise and Marcus sat in Denise's living room as Robert played the compiled footage on her television. He watched his son's face as the reality of what his wife had been planning unfolded before him. Marcus went through visible stages of emotion: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally, heartbreak. By the time the footage ended, tears streamed down his face. "I don't understand," he whispered. "We have problems, yes, but I thought we were working through them. I thought she loved me. I thought she loved our kids." "She loves money more," Denise said bluntly, "and she's having an affair." Marcus flinched as if he'd been struck. "Who is he?" "I don't know yet," Robert admitted. "But I think it's time we brought in the police." "No!" Marcus stood abruptly, pacing the small living room. "If we go to the police, if this becomes public, my children will grow up knowing their mother tried to kill their grandfather for money. Tyler and Essence will be destroyed. There'll be that family, the one everyone whispers about." "Son, she tried to poison me," Robert said gently. "She's dangerous." "I know!" Marcus's voice rose with anguish. "God, I know! But there has to be another way, some way to stop her, to protect you, without destroying my kids in the process." The three of them sat in heavy silence, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on them. Finally, Denise spoke. "What if we confront her privately, show her we have evidence, tell her she needs to leave quietly, get help, disappear from your lives without involving law enforcement?" "She tried to commit murder," Robert protested. "Attempted murder that didn't succeed because you caught her," Denise countered. "I'm not saying what she did isn't evil. I'm not saying she doesn't deserve prison. But I'm thinking about those kids, about Marcus, about your family. Sometimes the right thing and the legal thing aren't the same thing." Marcus looked at his father with desperate hope. "Could we do that? Could we just make her go away?" Robert thought about his grandchildren, Tyler with his gap-toothed smile and endless energy, Essence with her thoughtful questions and warm hugs. He thought about how they'd already lost their grandmother to cancer. Did they deserve to lose their mother to prison, to carry that shame and trauma for the rest of their lives? "We give her one chance," Robert said slowly. "One opportunity to leave quietly, sign away her parental rights, disappear. If she refuses, or if she tries anything again, we go to the police with everything. No second chances after that." They spent the next hour planning. They would confront Vanessa together the following evening when the kids were at their cousin's house for a sleepover. They would present the evidence, give her 24 hours to pack her things and leave, and require her to sign documents relinquishing her parental rights and any claim to Marcus's inheritance. It wasn't perfect justice, but it might be the kind of justice that protected the innocent. The confrontation happened in Robert's living room on a Friday evening. Vanessa arrived home from a shopping trip to find Robert, Marcus, and Denise waiting for her. The television was queued up with the footage. "What's going on?" Vanessa asked, her eyes darting between the three of them. "Where are the kids?" "Sit down, Vanessa," Marcus said quietly. "There's something you need to see." For the next 20 minutes, they played the footage. Robert watched Vanessa's face as she saw herself on screen, plotting, planning, researching how to kill him. Her expressions shifted rapidly: shock, fear, defiance, and finally, defeat. When the video ended, silence filled the room. "I can explain," Vanessa started, but Marcus cut her off. "Don't, just don't. I've listened to your explanations for months, about the business, about the debt, about why you needed more money, more time, more understanding. I defended you to my father when he expressed concerns. I made excuses for your behavior. I believed you when you said you loved this family. I do love. You were planning to murder my father." Marcus's voice broke. "For money, while sleeping with another man. You don't get to talk about love." Tears streamed down her face, her hands shaking as she gripped the armrests of the chair. "You don't understand the pressure I was under. The debt collectors calling every day, the credit cards maxed out, watching my friends live these perfect lives while I was drowning." "So you decided to kill someone?" Denise interjected sharply. "That was your solution?" "I wasn't going to actually do it," Vanessa protested desperately. "I was just exploring options. I never put anything in his drink." "I changed my mind." Robert leaned forward, his voice deadly calm. "You changed your mind because I didn't drink the tea, because I switched the glasses in my mind and poured it out. You stood in my kitchen at 2 a.m. disposing of evidence, Vanessa. Don't insult my intelligence by claiming you weren't serious." Vanessa's face went pale. "You knew?" "I knew enough to protect myself. And now we all know everything." Robert pulled out a folder of documents from beside his chair. "Here's what's going to happen. You have 24 hours to pack your belongings and leave this house. You will sign these papers relinquishing all parental rights to Tyler and Essence. You will sign this agreement stating you have no claim to any inheritance from me, now or in the future. You will divorce Marcus quietly, asking for nothing in the settlement. You can't take my children from me." "You were willing to make them half-orphans for money," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "You lost the right to call yourself their mother the moment you started planning my father's murder. I'll fight this. I'll tell everyone you're forcing me out, that you're manipulating me. And we'll release this footage publicly," Denise said coolly. "We'll provide it to the police, to the media, to anyone who will listen. Your face is crystal clear in every frame. Your voice is unmistakable. You want to fight? We have evidence of conspiracy to commit murder. You'll go to prison, Vanessa. Your children will visit you behind glass. Is that what you want?" Vanessa looked around the room at 3 faces that had once welcomed her into this family, now closed to her completely. The reality of her situation seemed to finally sink in. "Where am I supposed to go?" she whispered. "That's not our concern," Robert said, "but I'd suggest starting with that man you've been seeing, the one who encouraged you to kill me. See if he's still interested now that the money's off the table." Vanessa's shoulders slumped in defeat. "Can I at least say goodbye to Tyler and Essence?" "No," Marcus said firmly. "You'll write them a letter that I'll give them when they're old enough to understand. But you don't get to see them again. You don't get to confuse them or manipulate them or make promises you won't keep. Marcus, please sign the papers, Vanessa, or I call the police right now." With trembling hands, Vanessa signed each document. Robert had ensured everything was legally binding, had consulted with an attorney friend who owed him a favor. The parental rights termination would need court approval, but with Vanessa's signature and the circumstances, it would go through. When the last signature was complete, Vanessa stood on shaking legs. "I'm sorry," she said, looking at Robert with red, swollen eyes. "I'm so sorry. I'm not a bad person. I just made terrible choices." "Bad people rarely think they're bad," Robert replied. "They just think they're desperate. But we all face desperation, Vanessa. Not all of us respond with murder." Vanessa fled upstairs to pack, and they could hear her moving around the master bedroom, opening drawers, pulling clothes from the closet. 90 minutes later, she emerged with 3 suitcases and 2 garbage bags stuffed with belongings. She paused at the door, looking back at the house one final time. "Tell Tyler and Essence. Tell them I loved them, even if I showed it wrong. Even if I failed them. I'll tell them their mother had problems she couldn't overcome," Marcus said quietly, "and that we loved them enough to protect them from those problems." The door closed behind Vanessa, and they watched through the window as she loaded her car, got in, and drove away into the October darkness. Marcus collapsed onto the couch, his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Robert sat beside his son and pulled him into an embrace, the way he had when Marcus was a little boy with skinned knees and hurt feelings. "I'm sorry, son," Robert murmured. "I'm so sorry you had to go through this." "I loved her," Marcus choked out. "I really loved her. How did I not see what she was?" "Love makes us blind sometimes," Denise said gently, sitting on Marcus's other side. "You wanted to believe the best in her. That's not a weakness. That's who you are." They sat together for a long time, processing the surreal events of the evening. Finally, Marcus straightened up, wiping his eyes. "What do I tell the kids?" "The truth," Robert said. "An age-appropriate version of it. You tell them their mama had to go away because she was sick in a way doctors couldn't help with. You tell them it's not their fault, that they are loved beyond measure, and that this family will get through this together. They're going to be devastated." "They are," Robert agreed. "But kids are resilient. With love and support and therapy, they'll heal, and they'll be better off without a mother who was capable of what Vanessa planned." Over the following days, the house felt strange without Vanessa's presence. The kids returned from their sleepover to find their mother gone and their father struggling to explain why. Tyler, at 12, was old enough to sense that the explanation wasn't complete, that there were darker truths being withheld. Essence, younger and more trusting, accepted the story about her mother being sick and needing to go away. Both children cried, both asked when their mama was coming back. Both went through visible stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression. Robert watched his son navigate single parenthood with a grace that made him proud. Marcus took a week off work using bereavement leave, which this was, in its way, the death of his marriage and his children's family structure. He held his children when they cried, maintained routines to provide stability, and started family therapy sessions with a counselor who specialized in childhood trauma. Denise became a constant presence, helping with meals and childcare, providing the maternal energy the household desperately needed. Robert did what he did best. He created stability through small, consistent acts of love. Pancakes on Saturday mornings, help with homework at the kitchen table. Bedtime stories read in patient, soothing tones. Slowly, painfully, they began to heal. 3 weeks after Vanessa's departure, Robert received a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for everything. I'm getting help. Therapy, medication, everything I should have done years ago. I know I can never make this right, but I needed you to know I'm not the monster you think I am. I'm just broken. V." Robert stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without responding. Whether Vanessa was truly getting help or simply assuaging her guilt didn't matter anymore. She had made her choices. Now, they were all living with the consequences. A month after the confrontation, Marcus filed for divorce on grounds of abandonment and irreconcilable differences. Vanessa didn't contest it. The divorce was finalized with unusual speed, helped along by Vanessa's signed agreements and her failure to appear at any hearings. The parental rights termination took longer, requiring court approval and evaluation. But with documented abandonment and Vanessa's willing signature, the judge granted the petition. Tyler and Essence legally had only one parent now. On a cold December evening, Robert sat in his recliner, watching his grandchildren decorate the Christmas tree. Tyler was arguing with Essence about ornament placement with the intensity only siblings could muster. Marcus stood nearby, hands on his hips, pretending to referee, but mostly just smiling at their antics. The house felt full again, not with tension and secrets, but with the chaotic warmth of family. "Grandpa," Essence called out, "come help us. Tyler's putting all the good ornaments too high." "I am not. You're just short." Robert heaved himself out of his chair and joined them at the tree, settling the dispute with the wisdom of age and the diplomacy of experience. As he helped Essence hang a glass angel on a lower branch, he caught Marcus's eye. His son mouthed two words, "Thank you." Robert nodded. They had survived something terrible together. They had protected these children from a truth that would have shattered them. They had chosen family over vengeance, healing over punishment. It wasn't perfect justice. But standing there in his living room, surrounded by the people he loved most in the world, Robert realized it was something perhaps more important. It was mercy. And mercy, he was learning, sometimes required the strength to let go of what you were owed in favor of what was needed. The past couldn't be changed. Vanessa had made her choices and they had made theirs. But the future was still unwritten, still full of possibility. And that was enough. 6 months had passed since Vanessa's departure, and spring had transformed Detroit from its winter gray into a canvas of green and blooming life. Robert stood in his backyard, supervising as Tyler and Marcus worked together to build a raised garden bed, a project they'd started as a way to spend time together, to heal through the simple act of creating something with their hands. "Grandpa, is this level?" Tyler called out, holding a wooden beam in place while Marcus drilled screws into the frame. Robert checked with the Level app on his phone, a piece of technology Essence had taught him to use. "Little higher on your end, Ty." At 13 now, Tyler had shot up 3 inches since his mother left. He was at that gangly stage of adolescence, all elbows and knees and big feet he hadn't quite grown into. But there was a lightness about him that hadn't been there when Vanessa was still in the house, a freedom to be himself without walking on eggshells. Essence emerged from the house carrying a tray with lemonade and sandwiches, Denise following behind with paper plates. At 11, Essence had taken on a nurturing role in the household, helping without being asked, anticipating needs before they were expressed. Robert worried sometimes that she was growing up too fast, taking on responsibilities that shouldn't fall to a child. But the therapist they'd been seeing, Dr. Morrison, a black woman in her 50s with kind eyes and no-nonsense demeanor, assured them that Essence was processing her trauma in a healthy way, that her caretaking behaviors were within normal range, and that with continued support and therapy, she would be fine. They all would be fine. "Lunch break," Denise announced, setting plates down on the patio table. "Can't build on an empty stomach." As they gathered around the table, Robert's phone buzzed. A text from his attorney. Vanessa's petition denied. No visitation rights granted. Case closed. Robert had been expecting this. 3 months ago, Vanessa had filed a motion attempting to regain some form of contact with Tyler and Essence. She claimed she'd been in intensive therapy, had gotten help for what her lawyer called mental health issues stemming from financial stress, and wanted supervised visitation to rebuild relationships with her children. Marcus had been terrified the judge would grant it. The kids had been anxious, Tyler especially adamant he didn't want to see his mother. The legal battle had reopened wounds that were just beginning to heal. But the judge had reviewed the evidence, the surveillance footage Robert had provided, the documented abandonment, the termination of parental rights Vanessa herself had signed, the therapist's recommendation that reintroducing Vanessa would be harmful to the children's healing process. The petition was denied. The case was closed. Vanessa had no legal right to contact with Tyler and Essence. Robert slipped the phone back into his pocket without sharing the news. He'd tell Marcus later, in private. For now, he wanted to preserve this moment. His family gathered together on a beautiful Saturday afternoon, building something with their own hands, laughing over sandwiches and lemonade. "Dad, you okay?" Marcus asked, noticing Robert's distant expression. "I'm perfect, son. Just thinking about how far we've come." Marcus smiled, understanding implicit in his eyes. They'd all come far. Marcus had been promoted to plant manager at work, a position that came with better hours and significantly better pay. The financial pressure that had contributed to Vanessa's desperation had eased considerably. He'd also started dating someone, a woman named Keisha, who worked in the human resources department at his plant. It was casual, nothing serious yet, but Robert had met her twice and liked what he saw. She was grounded, financially independent, and genuine in her affection for Marcus. She'd met the kids once, briefly, with clear boundaries that this was a friend of their father's, nothing more. Tyler and Essence seemed to like her, which mattered. As for Robert, he'd found his own rhythm again. He still worked part-time at the hardware store, more for the social interaction than the money. He'd joined a weekly poker game with some retired veterans from his VFW post. He'd even been on a few dates with a woman named Gloria he'd met at church, a widow around his age who made him laugh and didn't expect anything more than companionship. Life, Robert reflected, had a way of continuing even after catastrophe. You picked up the pieces, you put them back together in a new configuration, and you kept moving forward. "Grandpa, when are we going to plant the vegetables?" Essence asked, pulling Robert from his thoughts. "Next weekend. We'll get tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, green beans, whatever you kids want to grow." "Can we grow watermelon?" Tyler asked hopefully. "Watermelon needs a lot of space, but we can try." After lunch, they returned to building the garden bed, working together until the frame was complete and filled with rich soil Marcus had purchased from a local nursery. By late afternoon, they were all dirty, tired, and satisfied. Denise left for an evening shift at the clinic. The kids went inside to shower. Robert and Marcus stood together in the backyard, admiring their work. "I got a text from the lawyer," Robert said quietly. "Vanessa's petition was denied. She can't contact the kids." Marcus's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank God. I've been worried sick about that." "It's over, son, really over. She signed away her rights. She abandoned her family. The courts aren't going to give her a second chance to hurt those kids." "Do you think she's really in therapy, really getting help?" Robert considered the question. "I don't know. Maybe. I hope so for her sake. But whether she is or isn't, that's not our concern anymore. Our concern is those two kids in there who need us to be present and stable and consistent. We're doing okay, right? As a family?" "We're doing better than okay," Robert assured him. "Tyler's thriving at school. Essence is happy. You're building a good life for them. That's all that matters." They stood in companionable silence, watching the sun sink lower in the sky, painting everything in shades of gold. "Dad, I never thanked you properly," Marcus said suddenly, "for trusting your instincts, for protecting yourself and documenting everything. If you'd just drunk that tea and thought nothing of it." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. "I've lived 57 years by trusting my gut," Robert said. "It kept me alive in Vietnam. It kept me employed through 3 decades of layoffs and plant closures, and it kept me from drinking poisoned tea. I'm not about to stop trusting it now. I'm sorry I didn't see it, that I defended her when you expressed concerns. Son, you loved your wife. You wanted to believe the best in her. There's no shame in that. The shame is all hers, for betraying that love, for putting money and her own desires above her family." Marcus nodded, but Robert could see the guilt still lingering in his eyes. That would take time to fade. Maybe it never would completely. Some scars ran too deep. Later that evening, after the kids were in bed, Robert sat in his recliner with a book he wasn't really reading. His mind wandered to Vanessa, wondering where she was now, what her life looked like. Was she with the man from the phone calls? Had that relationship survived once she had no money to offer? Was she genuinely in therapy, genuinely trying to understand the darkness that had led her to plan murder? He realized, somewhat to his surprise, that he didn't hate her. He'd been angry, certainly, betrayed and hurt and horrified. But hate required an energy he didn't want to expend. Vanessa was broken in ways that had nothing to do with him. Her brokenness had threatened his life, had destroyed her marriage, had robbed her children of their mother, but it was still her brokenness, her responsibility to heal or not heal. Robert had made his peace with what happened. He'd chosen to protect his family rather than pursue vengeance. He'd chosen mercy over justice, and he'd live with that choice without regret. His phone buzzed with a text from Gloria. "Still on for dinner tomorrow. There's a new soul food place in Ferndale I want to try." Robert smiled and typed back, looking forward to it. Life continued. That was the miracle and the mundane reality of survival. No matter how close you came to death, no matter how thoroughly your world was shaken, eventually you found yourself making dinner plans and planting gardens and helping grandchildren with homework. A month later, Robert celebrated his 58th birthday with a backyard barbecue. Denise and her husband came. Gloria attended as Robert's official date, earning approving nods from Denise. Marcus's girlfriend Keisha came with her teenage daughter, who immediately bonded with Essence over a shared love of a popular music artist. Tyler manned the grill under Robert's supervision, taking his responsibility seriously, determined to prove he could cook the burgers and hot dogs without burning them. Essence had made a cake, slightly lopsided, but decorated with love and too much frosting. As Robert looked around his backyard, at the people gathered there, at the laughter and warmth and genuine affection, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. A year ago, Vanessa had been planning his death. Now he was surrounded by life. Vibrant, messy, beautiful life. "Make a wish, Grandpa," Essence called out as Denise carried the cake to the patio table, 58 candles flickering in the early evening light. Robert closed his eyes. He didn't wish for wealth or youth or anything material. He wished for what he already had, for his family to remain healthy and whole, for his grandchildren to grow up knowing they were loved, for his son to find happiness again, for continued wisdom to navigate whatever challenges lay ahead. He opened his eyes and blew out the candles in one breath, earning applause from his guests. "What did you wish for?" Tyler asked. "Can't tell you, or it won't come true," Robert said with a wink. But he thought silently that it already had. Robert stood in the kitchen of his house, newly renovated with updates Marcus had insisted on funding, preparing Sunday dinner for his family. The June heat had everyone seeking the air-conditioned comfort of indoors, and the house buzzed with activity. Tyler, now 15 and suddenly interested in cooking, worked beside Robert chopping vegetables for a salad. He'd grown into his height, no longer gangly but athletic, playing basketball at his high school. He talked about colleges already, about maybe studying engineering like his grandfather had before switching to manufacturing. Essence, 13 and beautiful, sat at the kitchen island texting friends and occasionally offering commentary on the dinner preparations. She'd started writing poetry, journals full of carefully crafted verses that her English teacher encouraged her to submit to young writers' competitions. Marcus and Keisha were officially engaged now, planning a small wedding for the fall. Keisha's daughter Imani had blended seamlessly into the family, and Tyler and Essence had gained a stepsister who felt like she'd always been there. The doorbell rang, and Essence jumped up to answer it. "That's probably Aunt Denise." But when the door opened, the excited greeting died on Essence's lips. A woman stood on the porch, older than Essence remembered, thinner, her hair cut short, her clothes simple and worn. But unmistakably, her mother. Vanessa. "Essence," Vanessa breathed, tears already streaming down her face. "Baby, you're so big, you're beautiful." Essence stood frozen, her hand still on the doorknob, her face a mask of confusion and pain. Robert appeared behind his granddaughter, and the moment he saw Vanessa, his entire body went rigid. "What are you doing here?" I just wanted to see them, Vanessa said, her voice breaking. Just to see that they're okay. I'm not asking for anything, I promise. I just needed to know they were happy. Marcus emerged from the living room, and the color drained from his face. You need to leave, now. You have no right to be here. I know I don't. But I've been in therapy for 2 years, real therapy. I've worked through why I did what I did, faced the person I became. And I know I can't undo it. I know I destroyed everything, but I had to come just once to tell them I'm sorry. To tell you all I'm sorry. Tyler appeared at the top of the stairs, and when he saw his mother, his expression hardened. Go away. Tyler, you tried to kill Grandpa for money. You left us. You don't get to show up 2 years later and expect forgiveness. Vanessa flinched, as if struck. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I think about you every day. That I regret everything. That I'm trying to be better even though it's too late. Robert stepped forward, gently moving Essence behind him. Vanessa, you made your choices. We've all moved on. These kids are happy and healthy and thriving without you. You showing up here reopens wounds that took a long time to heal. If you truly care about them, you'll respect that and leave. Can I at least know they're okay? That they're happy? They're perfect, Marcus said firmly. They're loved. They're safe. They're everything they should be. And that's all you need to know. Vanessa nodded, tears flowing freely now. She looked at each of them, Tyler on the stairs, his face hard and closed. Essence partially hidden behind Robert, her eyes wide with shock. Marcus standing protective and angry in the doorway. Robert himself alive and healthy, the man she'd once planned to murder. I'm proud of them, she whispered, even though I have no right to be. Tell them their mama is proud of them. Goodbye, Vanessa, Robert said, not unkindly but with finality. She turned and walked back to a beat-up sedan parked on the street, got in and drove away. They watched until the car disappeared around the corner. The house was silent for a long moment, then Essence began to cry, great, heaving sobs that shook her small frame. Marcus immediately wrapped her in his arms, and Tyler came down the stairs to join them, the three of them holding each other in the doorway. Robert closed the door quietly and locked it. Later, after Essence had cried herself out, and Tyler had retreated to angry silence, and Marcus had called Dr. Morrison to schedule emergency sessions for both kids, they gathered around the dinner table anyway. The meal was quieter than usual, the laughter forced, but they were together. Are you okay, Grandpa? Essence asked quietly, her eyes still red from crying. I'm fine, baby girl. Takes more than that to shake me. Do you think she really changed? Tyler asked, his voice challenging, daring anyone to defend his mother. I think she's trying, Robert said carefully, but trying doesn't erase what she did, and it doesn't mean she gets to be part of your lives. You get to decide what role, if any, she plays going forward. And whatever you decide, this family will support you. I don't want her in my life, Tyler said firmly. Essence was quieter, more conflicted. I don't know what I want. That's okay too, Keisha said gently. You don't have to know right now. You don't have to make any decisions. You just have to know you're loved and safe. After dinner, after the dishes were washed and the kids had gone to their rooms, Marcus and Robert sat on the back porch, watching fireflies dance across the darkening yard. She looked rough, Marcus observed. She did. Part of me feels bad for her. That's because you're a good man, Robert said. But feeling bad for her doesn't mean letting her back in. Compassion and boundaries can coexist. Do you think she'll come back? I hope not. But if she does, we'll handle it. Same way we've handled everything else, together. Marcus reached over and squeezed his father's shoulder. I'm glad you're still here, Dad. I'm glad she didn't succeed. So am I, son. So am I. They sat in comfortable silence as night settled over Detroit, the city lights beginning to glow in the distance. Inside the house, Robert could hear Essence's music playing softly, Tyler's video game sounds filtering down from upstairs, Keisha and Imani laughing about something in the living room. Life continued. That was the miracle. Robert had faced death and survived. He'd faced betrayal and chosen mercy. He'd faced impossible decisions and made the ones he could live with. And now, at 59 years old, he was surrounded by family. Imperfect, complicated, beautiful family. His son was building a new future. His grandchildren were healing and growing, and Robert himself was still here, still needed, still loved. Vanessa's appearance had shaken them, yes, but it hadn't broken them. They were stronger than that now. They'd been through the fire and emerged forged in resilience. "You know what?" Marcus said suddenly. "I'm getting married in 4 months. Tyler starts high school in the fall. Essence is writing poetry that's actually good. You're dating Gloria and seem genuinely happy. We're okay. Despite everything, we're actually okay." "We're better than okay," Robert corrected with a smile. "We're thriving." And as the fireflies continued their ancient dance, and the June night wrapped around them like a warm blanket, Robert realized it was true. They had taken something broken and built something new. They had transformed trauma into strength, betrayal into boundaries, pain into wisdom. The glass had been switched, the poison hadn't been consumed, and the family that could have been destroyed had instead discovered just how strong they really were. That was enough. That was everything.